Well, good day, folks. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'm back. I'm working on the Secret Solve presentations. This is a series where I go through the book The Secret by Byron Price, and I look through the images and the text, trying to determine what the authors were trying to convey back in 1982. And so now I will just kind of work through the page 116 and then page 117 section of the book where we're talking about the Phantasma Glory. Phantasma Glory, otherwise known as the Miraculum Novum Dies. Hmm. Did somebody die? Or I don't know. Rick Dees? Oh, yeah, that's what that is. I gotta go look that one up. Rick Dees. Maybe he's too new. I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, all right. I'm back on track. Well, I was trying to figure out who this is. Who is the Phantasma Glory? We've got this image of this doll, and it's in front of all these magazines from the late 1982 period. And Us Magazine, Star People, National Enquirer. I talked about National Enquirer and Star earlier. It looks like in the smaller image, we have Kirstie Alley and Einstein with the doll. I mean, I think that's Kirstie Alley in the Interview magazine, but I can't be 100% sure. And if it is, then you've got all kinds of fun stuff that you can look at. If this is Kirstie Louise Alley, again, another one of those fun little facts where you run into the name and you get to another Louis, another Louise. But anyway, Kirstie Alley was born in Wichita, Kansas. Again, I truly believe there's one in Kansas somewhere, and this just kind of helps me along with that. Uh, to Robert Deal, oh, Deal, as in Dealey Bopper. I didn't know her father's name was Deal Alley, who owned a lumber company, and Lillian Alley. She had two siblings and went to Wichita Southeast High School. Well, one of my buddies actually went to school with Kirstie Alley, and she I think was either on the swim team or she worked at the local swimming pool with one of my buddy's sisters. Well, anyway, this is all relevant, and it's too obscure of information to be connected with the puzzle. But anyway, she was into Scientology, and that brought her to California. She interestingly appeared on the Match Game show in 1979 and won her rounds. And she is basically was an entire interior designer, and she was involved or an automobile accident involving a drunk driver killed her mother and left her father seriously injured. And so earlier in the book, we talked about drunk driving, teen angels, that kind of thing. And here, unfortunately, we have somebody who became that. Allie made her film debut in 1982 in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. And so I think she might have been making the magazine covers for Interview magazine because of the lateness of her. I mean, because she's relatively young. I think maybe that's why there's only one filmography thing. She was married from 71 to 77 to Bob Alley, who had the same name as her father. Alley married actor Parker Stevenson in 1983, so I guess that, if any information after that, is probably irrelevant here. But I actually think that's who's on Interview Magazine. But what's probably even more interesting about Interview Magazine is that Interview Magazine was started by Andy Warhol. And so here we go with Andy Warhol. We've got connections to the Village Voice here, and we've got connections to everything that would have to do with Andy Warhol and his art career um, in New York. And so Andy Warhol, uh, visual artist. This is kind of way of Byron Priest wanting to be the guy who produces visual art. So Warhol, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native, um, and so the parents are Austrian Hungarian, and they were working class parents. And so there's some cholera in the family. Somebody had nervous disease, etc. But Warhol's career was dedicated to commercial advertising art, where his first commission had been to draw shoes for Glamour magazine in the late 1940s. And we have all these different images that have shoes in them, right? And there's got to be a reason they have the shoe in them. And is it now because we've found um, Andy Warhol being involved? And anything to do with you know Warhol might be relevant here now. I don't know, but so Glamour magazine. Well, Glamour's not in this pile of magazines here, but again, there's a magazine reference and in this. So while working in the shoe industry, Warhol developed his blotted line technique of applying ink to paper and then blotting ink while still wet, which was akin to printmaking process on the most rudimentary scale. His use of tracing paper and ink allowed him to repeat the basic image and also to create endless variations on the theme. And so this leads to obviously the Campbells and the other type of things. MoMA, the Museum of Art, is important here. He had designed a book cover for Simon and Schuster, and I know Richard Simmons. I don't know if that's a close enough link to Simon or Simmons. And then he adopted silkscreen printing techniques. Uh, so his first studio was an old firehouse on 87th Street, and he created an Elvis, the Elvis series here, and he did some stuff with Elizabeth Taylor. And I think Elizabeth Taylor's actually in this group of magazines over here, and so you have that reference there. Um, he In 1968, there's an assassination attempt on his life. In the 70s, he did a retrospective. Part of that was a, a, a at Union Square, and then that leads into him with Farrah Fawcett, Mick Jagger, Liza Minnelli, John Lennon, Diana Ross, and Brigitte de Bardot. So those are some of the people that he worked with, and then the New York Academy of Art, etc. He was trying to recover. Oh, this is 87. He was still alive when the book came out, and so all right, that's the Andy Warhol Interview Magazine. Then we got Variety Magazine, and we can talk about Albert Einstein if you like. So Einstein. There's so much about Einstein that I'm not sure exactly what part of the Einstein legacy that we would want to put in front of the secret and what they wrote concerning this. Um, and so in 1908, you have him at the University of Bern. Uh, then he's at Ferdinand University. And by 21 and 22, he's traveling, abroad, and he's accompanied to the National Academy of Sciences and to visit the White House, Columbia University, Princeton universities. We get a mention of Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America here. Uh, he visited Singapore, Ceylon, Japan, South America, and then in the United States in 1930. He was a research fellow at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. After arriving in New York City, Einstein was taken to various places and events, including Chinatown, uh, and he had lunch with basically the New York Times, and he saw Carmen at the Metropolitan Opera. So Einstein went back to Caltech, talked to Robert Millikan, and he had some sort of an odd, I guess, friendship with that guy. Einstein befriended Upton Sinclair and Charlie Chaplin, and he was a pacifist, similar to those. In '93, immigrated to the United States, got this refugee status. He went back to London. He met Winston Churchill. Then he had a residency, I think, at and then became the famous person involved in the Manhattan Project. And so, probably Einstein's biggest legacy for most of us around here was his involvement in, developing the Manhattan Project. He was also a leader of the Hebrew organization, loved music, and where did he finally pass on? Plainsboro. He died in the University Medical Center of Princeton at Plainsboro, New Jersey. There you go. And so Albert Einstein, thermodynamics, rocketry again could be part of what was gravitational waves, all kinds of different studies, wormholes, you know, these types of things. So Einstein's pretty deep if you get into him. I don't know what the one drop dead connection would be out of that. So now let's try to figure out who the Phantasma Glory is before we move on to the people in the individual magazines. And we've talked about, and I think Gene Shalit looks a lot like this Phantasma Glory, but it appears to be a female doll. But I'm going to talk about Gene Shalit because he was a Today Show critic, but he was also, before that, he was the arts reviewer since 1967 for Look magazine, Ladies Home Journal, 12 years, Cosmopolitan, TV Guide, 17, Glamour, McCall's, and the New York Times. And from 1970 to 82, he had an NBC radio Man About Anything television show. And again, we keep coming back to these references to radio. Radio towers might be involved. Could be a location next to a radio tower that's involved with this. If this Gene Shalit guy is part of this mishmash doll. Gene Shalit, let's see. Anyway, the handlebar mustache, obviously. And this guy, Gene Shalit, he's Jewish as well. The other possible phantasmagoria is possibly Gloria Steinem, and Gloria Marie Steinem, and this particular conglomeration of images just might be glory. They might be all Gloria. I mean, this might be all about the Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. That might be what this image is about, because it is indeed the Phantasma Glory. So Gloria Steinem, she's a political activist, which seems to be something that's up the lines of Byron Price, and she's a second wave feminist. She was a columnist for the New York Magazine and co-founder of Miss Magazine. And so I'm thinking, as a Fantasia Glory kind of person, this might be who we're talking about, since she started her own or co-founded a magazine, and we're looking at all these magazines in the background. And I believe Gloria Steinem used to maybe wear some interesting glasses at one time. But anyway, she was born in Toledo, Ohio. And she's the daughter of Ruth Nunaviller, Ruth Nunaviller, and Leo Steinem, another Leo. I found another Leo. Oh, her father was Jewish, of course, and they immigrated from Germany and Poland. Her grandmother, Pauline Permuller Steinem, was a chairwoman of the Educational Committee at the National Women's Suffrage Association. So again, that's kind of right up the alley of what the authors and the people that got into writing about the political aspects want us to know about. Um, her parents divorced. She attended Waite High School in Toledo and Western High School in Washington, D.C. So she does have a little D.C. connection to her background. She was hired by Warren Publishing as the first employee at Help Magazine. So again, we're looking at a pioneer in journalism. And so, I think, perhaps we've got somebody that could be carrying the mantle of the Phantasma Gloria. Glory. Let's see. Oh, she's involved in a lot of different activist groups, and there's a lot of information here about her involvement in some of those. She got involved in the '68 election. Again, we've talked about the '68 election ad nauseum as being uh, and she supported Adlai Stevenson for president in 1952. So McGovern lost the nomination at the '68 National Convention, and Steinem later wrote in her astonishment, wrote of her astonishment at Hubert Humphrey's refusal to even to suggest to Chicago Mayor Richard J. Daley that to control the rampaging police and the bloodshed in the streets. And this is again where Daley had his gaffe that basically he said, in effect, we're not here to control disorder. We're here to create disorder. The police, that is. So again, we go back to that 1968 event, and we have another person, Gloria Steinem, perhaps the Phantasmagory. Now there was this thing. So this other guy, Rick Dees, and it says this is the Miraculum Novum Dees or Dies. So I'm going to talk about Rigdon Osmond Dees III, otherwise known as Rick Dees. He was a entertainer, whatever, and he came out with the 1976 satirical novelty song Disco Duck. You might remember him from Disco Duck. He was basically Rigdon Osmond Dees III. And this might also be the Osmond edition of the Secret, where Byron Price takes on the Osmond family. All of them. All 9 of them. Anyway, so Rick Dees was born in Jacksonville, Florida. In 1950, he was raised in Greensboro, North Carolina, and he went to Grimsley High School in the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He got into radio, and he was working for Greensboro's WGBG. And again, this, like I said, this might be the radio tower guy, and then again another radio tower reference in this one. And so he then got a full-time gig in Memphis, Tennessee. So again, Memphis, Tennessee, and that song can be heard in Saturday Night Fever in a brief scene in which a group of older people were learning to move their feet to the disco beat. Again, this whole foot thing, may have to just do with the dancing that's involved in Saturday Night Fever. Because I seem to be coming back to the Saturday Night Fever a few times. Anyway, he started doing So that's Rick Dees at the time. We talked about good old Kirstie Allen, Alley. Okay, we have one Osmond, which might be the guy. A fan, he might be a phantasmagory. This Rick Dees guy. But let's talk about Marie Osmond, because again, we're talking about the Marie, Glory Marie. So Olive Marie Osmond, and I don't know if there's an Olive uh, connection here or not, but she was born in Ogden, Utah, the eighth of nine children, and the only daughter, born to Olive May Davis and George Burrell Osmond. She was raised as a member of the Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints. Imagine that, another Salt Lake City reference in the book. It's the Osmond. It's Marie Osmond. Well, why Marie Osmond? Because she's pictured on Star Magazine, and I believe she's also pictured on the Horoscope and Weight Inquirer. And she was very popular in the 70s and 80s with her brother Donnie Osmond. In fact, they had a number of hits, including Paper Roses. Oh, that rose in that one image. You always want to associate that rose with Janis Joplin, or maybe with Bette Midler, who starred in the movie The Rose about Janis Joplin. But maybe it's just her 73 debut album, Paper Roses, reached number one, and kind of launched her into the atmosphere when thinking of people. Her fourth studio album was This Is the Way That I Feel. So Marie Osmond, Donnie Osmond, again, Salt Lake City. Again, a fun fact about Marie Osmond is that and ABC picked them up and gave them their own television show in the 1970s, late 70s, 79, 80, about the time the book was being formulated. And so I like to look at anything that comes out along around the time this book was formatted. Um, so the interesting fun fact about Miss Osmond is that she married Jeff Creighton in 1979, and he was an acting student, and uh, I think they married. No, hold on. No, let me back up. Her first marriage was to Stephen Lyle Craig, a BYU basketball player. Okay, so I've had this basketball thing where I thought that there might be some basketball stuff in here somewhere. Well, this could be a little of it, but probably not that important. But anyway, I'm getting to my point about her. She ended up marrying Stephen Lyle Craig, uh, her first marriage in 1982, which would have been when the book came out. Was when she married this guy, and he might be in this picture, by the way. I'm not sure. But so she then divorced him, married this other guy, and some 20 some years later, uh, obviously Byron couldn't predict the future, but she remarried her first husband. fun, fun Marie Osmond fact. Uh, so Stephen Craig is the first and current husband of Marie Osmond. Not much a wiki on him at all whatsoever. We talked about Andy Warhol already. Another person that's in these pictures on this is Princess Diana's in one of the images. I don't know if you get much out of Princess Diana. She just happens to be in one of the images, and so if you want to pull her in, I'm just pointing out she's in the background. Elizabeth Taylor, which is Dame Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor, a British and American actress, is also featured in the background image of one of these of the Us magazine, I think it is. But you have to choose which one of the people in here they were trying to highlight in this, and I think they were trying to highlight Marie Osmond, but Tom Selleck's in this one picture. I don't know if that's Russell or that's Simmons in there. I know Burt Reynolds is in there, but Selleck. Here's a guy from Detroit, Michigan. If you like anything that has to do with possibility, but Selleck graduated from Grant High School in 1962. So you have that. This is the second person, by the way, that has graduated from Grant High School in Los Angeles. Second one that's graduated from Grant High School, and so maybe we. He then went to the University of Southern California, the Trojans, and he played basketball for the USC men's basketball Trojans. So there's your second basketball reference. And again, I'm just trying to break you into the idea that basketball might be involved in this. He studied acting at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. I personally really like Beverly Hills. Um, you know, so let's see. Was Magnum PI on TV in 1982? Because this is where he got uh, his mojo going. Thomas Magnum. Yeah, in 1980 he played Thomas Magnum. And so the pilot series, but Magnum was a former U.S. Navy officer, a special ops SEAL, if you will. He is famous for this mustache, and I think this Phantasma Glory actually has a mustache, but and that's why I think it's Gene Shalit. But I don't know if it's I think that's a mustache. But so Selleck is, and speaking of stashes, so the next guy in there is Burt Reynolds. Burt Leon, another Leo, if you will, Reynolds Jr. And he started out in Gunsmoke, Dan August, Deliverance, blah blah blah. And he was born to Harriet Fern Miller and Burton Milo Reynolds, Dutch, English, Scottish ancestry, but he also claimed some Cherokee and Italian roots. So once again, we run into somebody that claims to have Cherokee roots. This guy he had to go to the army because he got drafted. I guess he um, couldn't somehow escape and go to the Navy. But anyway, he was born in Lansing, Michigan, so he's originally from Michigan. He has some connection. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. His mother, sister, and father were Fort Leonard, and then they moved to Lake City, Michigan. The family moved in 1946 to Riviera Beach, Florida, and his father eventually became chief of police of Riviera Beach, which is close to West Palm Beach, Florida. He attended Palm Beach High School, uh, and he was an all-state fullback. But here's where it really gets interesting for Burt Reynolds, because after graduating from Palm Beach High School, he attended Florida State University. Florida State University is a public research university in Tallahassee, Florida. And if you go look at the Florida State University football mascot, it is, what is it? It is, what is that again? Oh, it just looks like the horse and rider in the image. That's what it looks like. And so uh, Lee Corso, another Leo. Lee Corso has some. His roommate was Lee Corso, another Leo, if you will. Anyway, so the part I like to get out of uh, this guy is the fact that he went to Florida State University and he was involved with football, which that mascot of the horse riding across the football field is always etched in my mind every time I see the guy standing next to the flag. Tallahassee, capital, Florida State. Okay, so then he goes to Hollywood, and then you obviously can have all the fun you want with him as a bouncer at the Roseland Ballroom, or as a dock worker, or he was offered $150 to jump through a glass window on live television. He probably did it. And then he was in this television series show called Riverboat. Oh, that's right. We just talked about riverboats in the previous article. Oh, it's a theme developing here. The riverboat theme. Mmm. Gunsmoke. Uh, when you get into these actual roles that these people played, you know, one of the first movies I ever watched when I was in, like seventh or eighth grade, we went to the movie Smoking the Bandit, 1977. He played the bandit in that movie. And so he's in this Us magazine picture. Suzanne Summers, born Susie Marie Summers. So, like I said, this might just be all about the Maries. Mahoney is her real name. She's probably best known as being Chrissy Snow on Three's Company. And she was born in San Bruno, California, Irish Catholic. Her mother's name was Marion Elizabeth Turner. She was a medical secretary, and her father was a gardener. A gardener. Oh, let's see. We just had in the previous story some gardening references and the cultural gardens. She went to the San Francisco College for Women. So if you like San Francisco and you like looking at these magazine covers and seeing who's in them, you get a little bit for that. She's in six. She's in like the $6 Million Man and some other stuff. Uh, so she's in the Three's Company in 1980, and that's probably what put her on the cover of Us magazine. Uh, so the other magazine cover, I think, is Cheryl Tiegs. Honestly, the People magazine, the Fashion's $100 Million Lady, I think is Cheryl Tiegs, and she might be here because she did the covers of Sports Illustrated. So not only would she have been a People magazine cover, but she would have been a cover for that. She was born in Breckenridge, Minnesota, to Phyllis and Theodore Tiegs. He was an auto assembly lineman turned funeral director. How do you go from being a guy that works at the at the auto plant to the funeral director? Maybe he worked at Kaiser. He buried the own company he worked for. Kaiser went out of business and he buried them. She and her family moved to Alhambra, California in 1952. She's a German, and she appeared on 17 magazine. She went to Cal State in LA, in Los Angeles. And so she was in she got a break from Glamour magazine. Ally McGraw. Maybe we should have looked up Ally McGraw. She might be that. She made the cover of People 4 times, as a matter of fact. She did cover Girl Cosmetics. We talked about Estee Lauder earlier in the cosmetics industry. All these things kind of run together. She met photographer Peter Beard in New York in 1978. And you noticed how I talked about Beard, that Beard guy, and you've got these other guys in this with mustaches, beards, mustaches. But anyway, the Saucer's Apprentice is the Beard guy that was in the Saucer's Apprentice with Julia Child, and now we have another Beard. And for those people that like the seated Lincoln, just there's your beard, there's your beard. So the American Sportsman titled Africa ended the game in 1979. Okay, we got now another an Africa represent. They were married in '81, and they traveled back and forth between U.S. and Hog Ranch in Kenya. Okay, so there's more of that triangular trade, if you will. She had a signature line of clothing at Sears in 1980, which is probably gave her that $1 billion in sales. And later on, you maybe put oh that lady that was in the other one on there. Um, let's see. Morgan Fairchild comes up here. Um, uh, there's a specific mention to Richard Wagner's egomaniacal, perfect example of fame-ridden opera about them. And so let's see if we can look that one up. Richard Wagner. Sorry, I didn't have this one pulled up. Wagner. Richard Wagner was a German composer, uh, polemist, some other fun stuff. So I think the Wagner that they're trying to actually point you to is Robert Wagner, which is a whole different Wagner. And I think that basically this is the first introduction of the Robert Wagner story of Natalie Wood. And I think that this is the introduction to tell you that there's a story that says, "Take the plunge," they whispered. "Go for the gold." Well, if you know the death of Natalie Wood, you'll realize that most people think that Robert John Wagner Jr. is responsible for her death, and that he was, he was popular from this series called Heart to Heart and Switch, and It Takes a Thief. He was born in Detroit, Michigan, and to Thelma Hazel Alvera Bow, a telephone operator, and Robert John Wagner Sr., a traveling salesman who worked for the Ford Motor Company. So his mother was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and his father was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. But anyway, the theme here is Robert Wagner, and he is the guy that we really want to focus in on because the only thing that's really important about him is his relationship uh, to Natalie Wood. In 1956, when he was 26 years old, he became involved with 18-year-old actress Natalie Wood. They were married in 1957 in Scottsdale, Arizona. They separated in 1961 and divorced in 1962. Wagner was engaged to Tina Sinatra. I don't know whatever happened to that. Wagner began dating Jill St. John, uh, another actress. But the most important thing that happened is on November 29th, 1991, Robert Wagner was on the yacht Splendor, and it was moored near the isthmus of the Santa Catalina Islands. And if you look at the last image, you can undoubtedly say that there's an image of the Catalina Island right there. And all of the stuff that could have to do with Southern California may just, it all might just be out in the ocean. But anyway, Christopher Walken and Wagner and the captain of the boat were all on this boat, the Splendor. And the Los Angeles County coroner unfortunately had to come in here because of the fact that poor old Natalie Wood was found floating in the water. And so Wagner's always been a person of interest in this, but has never actually admitted guilt to this. But you like the Disco Inferno in 1974. Robert Wagner was Dan Bigelow in the Towering Inferno. And so Mike Banning in 1967. That gets you to Banning and the Banning family. Using these movies to make links is kind of delving into the 6 degrees of separation problem that you have with Hollywood or the rest of the world for that matter. But Natalie Wood is, I think, the person that we're really talking about. And that's who I think the San Francisco image possibly is Natalie Wood, Zakharenko. She was born in San Francisco, California, daughter of Russian parents. Byron likes the Russians. Maria Zudilova and Nicholas Zakharenko. Her mother, who also used the name Marie. Again, I said this image, I said this whole entire story is about the Maries. And we're talking about Natalie Wood. We're talking about another Maria. Her mother's name's Maria. Father's name was Nicholas. So anyway, Wood's father was a carpenter. I like the carpenter reference because I think that puts you back into Cellar on New York, all the carpentry references. Um, and there's some reference here to Vancouver. Eventually, the family moved to Santa Rosa, and uh, early in her childhood, she was a child actor. And I always look at that image and I see this fly in that image, this butterfly, and she had a trouble crying in the scene, and so her mother tore the wings off of a butterfly, and that prompted her daughter to cry on cue. You like the rose, and you think that's Janis Joplin. In 1952, she was in the Rose Bowl story, um, and so there's just as much connection here to a rose connection. And so, anyway, she was in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean. Now, you remember earlier when I thought that one of the teen angels next to the Kaiser car was James Dean? Well, now we have Natalie Wood co starring with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Maybe too much of a coincidence. Remember, I mentioned James Dean and the Kaiser car? Uh, she starred on a show called The Kaiser Aluminum Hour. And so here you have Natalie Wood uh, and the Kaiser automobile, the Kaiser Aluminum Hour. So you've got, that happening. Remember in the last story, I talked about how um, Mary Todd Hunter Rockefeller's son died, and she was with Tab Hunter in Marjorie Morningstar. She went to Van Nuys High School. She was in two films with Tab Hunter. Splendor in the Grass. Well, that's basically another Natalie Woods. West Side Story. I mentioned that earlier. But again, it's all about where poor old she died, and that's the main thing here. Is that Christopher Walken, Splendor, inflatable dinghy on the beach. The captain's name was Davern. Um, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think that's what gets you to Catalina Island is the Phantasmagoria and Wagner. Um, so you got the Guinness Book of Records involved here. I think that's just to bring you back to the record player and there's a photograph in the back of the book here that has that that was in front of Capitol or Tower Records or something like that Ben Eason has talked about a few times. In the United States, they've done some of their best work, are urging folks to give everything they've got for a shot at the vice presidential nomination. And I think that's, again, the Gloria Steinem. And it says here that the Phantasmagories can chase people from Hollywood to Washington. And I think that's a direct shot at Ronald Reagan and Ronald Reagan's presidency. And I think that's a direct hit to Ronald Reagan and the people that went from Hollywood to Washington. And we all know Ronald Reagan's presidency, the 40th of the United States. And let's see, was he elected president or running for president when the book came out? So I mean, he's from what is he? He was born in Tamco, Illinois. Nellie Clyde Wilson and Jack Reagan. Okay, well, anyway, he was in radio, film, etc., television. 66 governor, California governorship to 75. In 1975, he sought the presidency uh, from 75 to 81. And 1980 election, I think he won 80. Yeah, so he became president in 1981. And so the Phantasmagoria is probably mentioning in here the Cowboys that run to Hollywood, and then the Hollywood Cowboys that go to Washington. And so we probably could do a little more research and figure out who the cowboy that ran to Hollywood could be. Um, so morons in the stands take their shirts off for the cameras, dancers, study voice, poets give readings. Um, yeah, there's probably somebody buried in there that we're not sure who it is, but I'm pretty sure that the reference is to Ronald Reagan. And the reason I say this is because in in National Lampoon magazine for a whole entire year in 1980, the magazine focused on the diaries of Nancy Reagan. They had a feature in National Lampoon magazine every frickin' month. Every month in their magazine about Nancy Reagan's diaries. And so I think that you've got a pretty good, strong connection to Ronald Reagan. What it means in terms of the secret, what part of Ronald Reagan you want to pull out and utilize, it becomes the problem here because of his movie work. And maybe, that's where he comes into play, or maybe it's just during his governor period. I know that Nancy Reagan, when she first got into office, had this whole idea of just say no to drugs. So there's that. He was married to Jane Wyman before he married Nancy Reagan. Uh, the other thing is they always accused old Ronnie Reagan of having his wife use astro movements of the chart to determine political things. And if that's you've got the horoscope. Oh no, they don't have the horoscope page. I thought maybe they had the horoscope page down here in the National Enquirer showing, but they always had the horoscopes in the star. Oh, here it is. Horoscope to lose weight. So that might that there you go. The horoscope is in this one magazine here. And so you have the Nancy Reagan stuff already being thrown into the secret. But anyway, so I went on quite a while about this one. There's a lot to unpack in that one, and whether it's Ronald Reagan, whether it's the Marias, the Osmonds, there's a lot of references to some of the puzzle solved locations. I think, in my opinion, that could point you in the right direction to getting the one that's on Catalina Island. To maybe getting the one in Salt Lake City. Maybe even looking a little bit more at Florida and where in Florida State University's general area of Cascades Park you might want to look. And Kirstie Alley might get you to Kansas, might get you in the right general area for looking for that one. So anyway, I appreciate everybody that joined in today to talk about The Secret. I'll move on to the Kinder Guardians, the Los Angeletti next. Oh, the Los Angeletti kindergartners. Are we going back to the kindergarten cop? Are we going to the kindergarten cop? Had that movie came out? Arnold, I knew you'd be back.